Hey guys, today I'm going to be changing the front wheel and brake setup on my Mustang. So currently I run a Sandtuff strut with, it's a spindle mount style strut where the spindle's built onto the strut. There's not a separate knuckle for weight savings. And it uses the TBM front brake kit, which has a hub with 5 lugs and the wheel bolts on, kind of like just a normal vehicle hub. What we're gonna do is switch over to a full spindle mount. So the wheel actually has the bearings built into it. It's a Weld Racing wheel. So it eliminates that whole hub assembly, and it's going to be about 5 pounds lighter aside. I know that doesn't sound like much, but in a car like this where we've pretty much saved weight everywhere we can, we're looking for scraps now. This summer I'm trying to take 100 pounds out of the car, which is a lot. So this 10 pounds, 10% of that moves us closer to our end goal. And today we're going to go ahead and just go through a brief install of the brake kit because I looked around online, there's not a lot of videos of that. At least you guys can see it laid out. What to look for and how to do it yourself. So one thing about the TBM brakes you may or may not know, you see a lot of people doing the like the spinning of the wheel. Now it doesn't stop. Their caliper is a drag-free design, so there's no drag on the brake pads when you're not hitting the brake, which is ideal for drag racing when you don't want rolling resistance. You see most of the videos with new brakes. Well, here's an example. These brakes were on this car when I bought it, so they're probably 2.5 years old right now. Who knows how many passes, and they still spin like they were when they were brand new. No drag. Stopping power is great. I've stopped this car when the parachutes didn't come out at 200 miles an hour. No problems at all. So these brakes are awesome. Highly recommend them to everyone. Weight savings and functionality. There's no downfalls. I've ran every brake there is on the market, and I'll never run another one. This is it. So we're gonna go ahead and remove this old setup to get ready to put on the spindle mounts. We got the old hub off, and as you can see, this is already a lightweight, very well thought out part. It's great, no complaints at all, except that we're looking for every ounce possible now. So this new combo, as you can see, the hub is part of the wheel. The bearings will go in there, like in here, and then eliminates the lug nuts, the studs, and all that. So the wheel is just part of it. The rotor will bolt to the wheel, as you'll see, and it'll go on as one piece, eliminating a lot of components here. The new setup compared to this will be around 5 pounds lighter aside. Now that will vary car to car depending on what old hub you had, but this is the lightest one possible on the market already. So we're not saving as much. I think generally they get almost 10 pounds aside, but being we had the light ones already with aluminum lugs and things, it's about 5 pounds for my car. So now we're gonna start to assemble the brakes onto the wheel and then onto the car. Part of installing any brake kit, no matter what the brand is shimming the calipers. So you want the caliper centered on the rotor, so the pistons are the same distance away from the pads, and the pads are away from the rotor each side, so the brakes are applied evenly and not one side's dragging compared to the other side. On this spindle mount, another thing that we have to watch out for is actually caliper clearance to the wheel. So TBM comes with these shims here that will actually space the rotor hat off the wheel to allow room for the caliper. In their instructions, it says that the 17-inch wheels are more prone to this problem. I went ahead and I did the other side of the car already, so I know that the caliper will hit without these shims, so it requires me to run both these shims on these Weld V-Series wheels. At this point, we're gonna dry fit everything because more than likely it's gonna have to come back off the car 1 or 2 times to get the spacing right, because where the shims go, it has to come apart to do that. And with the wheel as part of the hub, you gotta basically take the bearings out each time. So we're gonna put the hat on with the shims on. We're gonna run all the bolts in and snug them down without any Loctite. And then later, once we know that our spacing is correct, we'll remove everything and go ahead and Loctite our bolts and get everything in the proper installation. Same thing with our rotor. We're just going to install the bolts dry, no Loctite at this time, being that it may need to come off again later. Going to set the rear bearing in, no grease yet because it's going to come back apart like we said, and then the shim spacer comes with the kit. You can see the concave side here on the strut. You'll see where that goes towards that. This is going to go on the back side of the bearing, and then the seal will go in later. We're going to go ahead and put that in now without the seal, and then fit the wheel up on the spindle, and then see how our spacing is. Now the brake caliper bracket's going to go over the spindle and mount to the strut before the wheel goes on. The spacing of this bracket will determine where the caliper sits on the rotor. The other side took 2 small shims, so the kit will come with multitude of shims. There's some that are 30 thou, some are about 12 thou. This one took 2 of the 12 thou shims on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and start this side off with the same shims that the other side took, in a hope that the front end is relatively the same, and make it for easy use. I'm going to slide the bearing on the spindle first because there's no seal in the wheel to hold the bearing in. It makes it a little easier. All right, we're going to go ahead and slide the pads in, and when you're doing this, what you're looking for, what we're talking about as far as spacing goes, is we put the shims in behind the wheel. So what we did was we moved the rotor that much further back, and then the caliper mount is fixed. So we moved the rotor back there, and what we want now is the rotor to be perfectly centered into our caliper. On a spindle mount setup, this is more difficult than on a conventional setup because you have a wheel and tire in your way that you can't take off because it's part of it. So it's a little trickier to get in there. But now we're going to slide the pads in. You'll know right away if you're close or not. If you're far off, well, one pad won't even go in and the other pad's going to have excessive clearance, and then you'll have to see which way you need to move it. If you're tight on the front side and loose on the back side, well, then you need the caliper to go that way. So then, we'd shim this bracket out here further to move the caliper further out of the rotor. Or if it needed it the other way, we'd remove shims to bring it in, or shim the caliper off the stand that way. There's a few different ways to get the job done, but essentially you get the gist of what you're looking for. So those slid in very nice on each side. See how much play we have there, which is a nice amount. Man, we're really close. Eventually you'll get a feel for these the more you do. You can use feeler gauges in the rotor against the pad to get very precise with it. If you've installed a lot of these brake kits already, you kind of have an idea of how it is just by feel. Maybe I'll see if I can fit some feeler gauges in there for the video, but I would be satisfied with this how it is right now. So now we have our dry fitment up and we're happy with our spacing. We're going to go ahead and pack the wheel bearings and go ahead and get them installed in the wheels of the buddy bearing tool that works great for getting the grease inside the rollers. So this is just a Mobil 1 synthetic high temperature grease. I think everyone has their favorite flavor of grease, but you just want to make sure that you're using a high quality one, being that the speeds these cars are going, there's a lot of friction here, so with friction there's a lot of temperature, so you want to have a grease that can handle the temperature well, that's not going to displace and not lubricate your bearing. The shim that we talked about earlier is actually going to go inside of the seal lip, and then we're going to knock the seal into place. So this is, you just have to work this in, make sure that it's not rolling the lip. And we're looking good there. We'll go ahead and knock the seal in place. Trusty 2x4. She's good. All right, so we're gonna go ahead now and install the rotor hat and install the rotor, and we'll use our red Loctite on this because we don't want this coming off as we're going down the racetrack. Run them down with the gun and then torque them with our torque wrench. And the same thing with the rotor. All right, so we don't want to forget to take this bracket back off and apply Loctite or thread locker to these bolts too. We were over at the table, we just had this on for test fitment. So we're gonna go ahead and take that off and then put the thread locking on these bolts, and we'll be ready to put the wheel into place. Paquito. Top bolt's a through bolt with the nut on the other side. And if you're wondering what this little cutout is here on the brake bracket, this is a provision for a Rife Hall effect sensor. They come already pre-cut out on both sides, and this is to measure front wheel speed. Front wheel speed is great for traction control, mainly on a race car like this. We use it every pass we make. So driven wheel versus non-driven wheel, you can dial in slip percentages and things like that. It works awesome on the street. And the most important part of any TC system is the quality of the speed sensors. So I've been using this now since I built this car. TBM makes a tone ring that bolts onto their brakes that is really awesome. It's close to factory level wheel speed signal. The spindle mount brakes also have one that they make for it. I don't have it yet. They just released it. I'm going to be getting that in a couple weeks, but I can show you on my old rotor setup what it looked like. So this is the tone ring that they offer. These are the pickup points. The rotor would go against that. The sensor would face here, and it's going to measure those openings when it sees that. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and tighten up the wheel bearing now. A lot of people have little different methods for this, but basically how I've done it, and I like to do it, is to tighten it up pretty tight to make sure that the bearing is seated and everything is in place, and that it still spins free. And then what you wanna do then is come back off of it and go until you feel it start to bottom out. You don't wanna over preload the bearings when they're in a cold state, because when everything heats up, it expands, and then they'll get tighter naturally. So you just want it, you know, tight but not tight. Some manufacturers will have a preload setting. This I didn't look it up, but this is basically how I do it. Now we'll go ahead and put our brake caliper on, install the brake pads, and bleed the brakes. Now we have the caliper on and the brake pads in. The last piece that's going to go in are the brake pad retainers. So this is a floating pad style, so there's nothing that actually like bolts the pad to the caliper. This double pin is going to go through the holes in the top of the pad, the front and rear. And then the screw is going to hold it in place, and that allows the pads to float and not fall out of the caliper. Now we'll switch our brake line from our old caliper. And they're ready to bleed. Now that we're done, we're getting closer to my weight goal of the car, and I hope this visual aid will help you guide to install your front brakes at some point. TBM's website has very good written instructions for each specific brake kit, so definitely refer to that. But keep watching for more videos like this. We're going to do more installs and more progress on my car. Thanks for watching. See you next time.